Another interesting thing going on right now, we saw that Claudia Sheinbaum was elected mayor. Forgive me, she's the former mayor of Mexico City. President. She got a big job promotion of Mexico. And interesting because she's Jewish, she's a woman. In Mexico, you wouldn't necessarily think that she was that electable, but she had the support of the previous president, and he put in a lot of things, a lot of systems that I think people want to see continue. And she's promised even more vis-a-vis the gravy train or handouts, as you might say. The problem, however, I think, Rob, with her is that people view her as a bit of a danger to the economy because she is so much of a leftist, so much of a socialist, that they worry there won't be a ton of economic responsibility there. On top of it all, she also, she's a little bit sponsored by the WEF, the World Economic Forum. They love her there. You know, she gets to go and speak, and then occasionally they print some of her headlines, like the one where she insisted, first order as mayor of Mexico City, that everybody had to wear the same kind of uniform. They weren't going to have skirts or whatever anymore because, you know, boys can wear skirts, etc. So she has a lot of this going on, right? A lot of the cultural stuff from the left, along with the economic stuff from the left. And she also believes in porous borders. So I look at that and I say, what does that mean for the U.S.? In terms of Mexico itself, I mean, if you invest in emerging markets and an emerging market ETF, or specifically in the Mexican stock exchange or companies there, I understand, you know, people having some trepidation right now. You look at the peso having fallen, I mean, it's stabilized a little bit, but people are kind of thrown off, right?
Trish, it collapsed at the end of the day today. It's down another 5%.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So the peso's at its lowest level. You know, it had bounced a little bit. So rough week for Mexican stocks. The ETF, EWW, that you know, that iShares MSCI ETF for Mexico, down 13% in dollar terms since the election. That's a big move.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Milei in Argentina.
Yeah, two totally different trajectories over the last few months. And it's interesting, Mexican equities really started to slip as well, kind of leading into the election. You know, when it was clear that she was going to win, but you know, she didn't just win; she won very convincingly. And I think that's what's and picked up the Morena party picked up all of these seats in the upper house and the lower house of Congress. And the concern is that they're now going to have this supermajority and an ability to make these constitutional reforms that will, which they've announced that they've intended to do, or the predecessor announced this, that will undermine judicial independence and all this kind of institutional independence. So, you know, emerging market investors are looking at this and saying, like, this is a recipe. We've seen this movie before. Sure. With emerging countries. This is a recipe for property rights no longer being respected. So they're pulling capital out. I think it's
a risk. I mean, it's a risk. The question is she like, you know, Lula in Brazil was, where, you know, in spite of him being a super leftist, I'm not talking about now, but back in the day, going back to the year 2000, 1999, you know, Brazil actually went into a very strong performing time period. That those days are gone, obviously now, but you compare and contrast it with, say, Venezuela, who elected Hugo Chavez right around the same time. And Chavez wound up instituting so many leftist programs, but on top of it was the dictator effectively that he was, and you did have property rights go right out the window. And so it's a question of, is she sort of contained within, okay, she's a lefty, but still believes in basic principles and some capitalist foundation, or is she going to go the way of some of these other lefties in Latin America, a la Chavez, and have problems?
So, yeah, I mean, so she's clearly nothing like Chavez. And, you know, he's kind of a militant Marxist type, grew up kind of idolizing Che Guevara. She's a Berkeley-educated climate scientist, right? She literally authored...
Don't be so sure they're not more closely related than you think. I'm teasing. Well,
I
gotcha.
I mean, I think they probably are in many ways, but, coming at it from different angles, right? You know, she literally wrote the UN's like 5th intergovernmental report on climate change. It's a very prominent report that's kind of driving all of these policies globally. You pointed out her kind of.
AMLO wasn't like that though. He was actually all about like let's tap our natural resources of energy. So even though she's his protege and sort of handpicked successor, they actually differ on some of those social issues, including the climate stuff.
Yeah. So I guess my early read is that she's probably, intellectually, ideologically, like aligned with the Davos crowd. Mm-hmm. She's into expansion of the state. She's comfortable with, eroding these kind of separation of powers and these sort of institutional, pillars, right? That investors are so concerned about. So the market's not happy. The market is voting with its feet and selling the peso and selling Mexican stocks.